checking. Oh. Excuse me. SAMPHAPPAPALAPA. 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 It's a lovely word, isn't it? It means, in the Pali language used in Theravada Buddhism, it means useless talk, speaking nonsense, idle chat. So nothing particularly sinful. So where does that SAMPHAPPAPALAPA find its place in Buddhism? Well, it finds itself placed quite highly in the Noble Eightfold Path because it comes under point number 3, right speech. We have right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. So right up there with right in view and right intention is right speech. It also, not SAMPHAPPAPALAPA, but right speech or refraining from lying is the 4th of the 5 precepts. But in the Noble Eightfold Path, which expands upon the 4th of the 5 precepts of no lying into 4 parts, which are refraining from harsh speech, divisive speech, lying, so untruthful speech, or idle chat, useless speech, or talking nonsense. This kind of thing. This part of the Noble Eightfold Path, right speech, really comes under the path category of sila, being as it has its very important place there in our 5 precepts, or your 5 precepts, and for monastics it comes up in a number of our rules and regulations concerning right speech. But we all strive to keep ourselves on this path. However, it is, in terms of both the precepts, so refraining from lying, or you could just say, it depends how literally you take that. This does include, of course, exaggeration. It includes white lies. It includes not telling the truth if it is with a view to deceive. Simply leaving something out isn't lying. But if you purposely leave something out to misdirect someone, it is considered lying, I'm afraid to say. But it's evident, it's it's a fact that this is one of the hardest of the precepts to keep. And in the Noble Eightfold Path, right speech is one of the hardest skills to really develop because it covers so much more. So let's just look at that a little bit. SAMPHAPPAPALAPA, firstly. What is the point of SAMPHAPPAPALAPA? Why does it have its own Pali word? Well, it's very important. We are practicing mindfulness, and where it's most hard to actually put mindfulness into action is with regards to what this does, what I am doing now, speaking. Even now, trying to be mindful of each word that I am saying. My speech, what I am saying, is to some extent just coming out. I have no script, it's unrehearsed. I have to rely on a certain amount of previous practice to be confident that when I try to speak about a subject matter, as we all do, that it will come out in a kind and a considerate and a well-mannered way. It will possess a tone that is, how can I say, not displeasing to the ear. So we have in this 4 categories of right speech, harsh speech. I think the way order it goes is no lying. We know what lying is, so we don't need to go into the depth of that. Harsh speech is more about tone than content, how we address someone, how we respond. There is so much in our tone that we can get so wrong. I know in lay life I had a considerable difficulty with tone. On the few rare occasions I had an employer, for various reasons I was working for large companies, they didn't really like me much because I had the wrong tone in my response to those people. It wasn't what I was saying. I just didn't have the right mannerisms, the right tone to be an employee, which is why I spent the majority of my career as a self-employed person. And generally working a lot alone. I had very rarely employees, because similarly, the gift of having the correct tone and mannerisms is a blessing. It's something that we don't all have. I'm rather to the point, abrupt, and that can, in Western ears, sound to some extent rude. Not all Western ears. If you speak to German people speaking, I don't speak German, but some German people, when I speak to them, and Russians, so Eastern Europeans, speaking to me, I get on with them very well, because they're to the point, they're abrupt. But some Westerners would consider that rude. So it's a very sensitive and difficult issue. This is why you can probably understand why it's so easy to stray off the path at number 3 with right speech, with just this aspect of harsh speech, so difficult to maintain this pleasant speech, or whatever the opposite of harsh speech is. Now we know the black and whites of it all. It's the grey area that I'm saying is difficult to define. But with the practice of all of the other precepts, with the practice of mindfulness, with meditation, because this sharpens our focus, it helps us maintain mindfulness, with all these things in place, with the rest of the Noble Eightfold Path, because all of the 8 points are complementing each other, assisting each other, contributing to the one aim, then, and if you just take the 3 categories of sila, moral virtue, those parts of the Noble Eightfold Path, samadhi, which is the meditation side, which can include right effort, which is also sila, mindfulness and concentration, those three parts of the Noble Eightfold Path, and wisdom, panya, which is right view, then all of those together work towards us speaking nicely. You'll see signs in a lot of meditation centers, and you won't see signs, but you'll know that in monasteries they practice something we call noble silence. Now, this isn't walking around, I mustn't speak. No. In fact, the Buddha prohibited the practice of just being silent, never speaking, to some extent, because he suggested this was not appropriate for community life, and as monastics we have to liaise with lay people. So we can't go around saying, with a sign round our neck saying, I just do not speak. Albeit that's a very good way of avoiding any of these transgressions of sila when it comes to speech. I found a useful tool of developing right speech in my own practice is living in monasteries where they don't speak English, because I don't speak any other languages, and it's very difficult therefore for me to go very wrong in terms of speech. Now, like I will develop a little bit more upon in my next video, with regards to guarding the senses, that isn't completely suppressing speech, that isn't completely burying my head in the sand. It's giving me the opportunity to think about speech, to have a clear mind, practice samadhi, practice mindfulness. And then when I do have the opportunity to speak clearly, succinctly, and with as much mindfulness as possible to avoid harsh speech. I don't have so much problem with lying, and again, so we won't need to go into that one so much. That could be another talk if ever necessary, but I think we all can appreciate the 5 precepts. Number 4 is just about not lying, and that we do really in our heart of hearts know if we lie or if we don't, if we're telling the truth, if we're not, if we're exaggerating, we're just bending the truth and white lies. It's not to be done. It just comes back to get you in the end. So we have dealt with lies, harsh speech, divisive speech. Now this could be called gossip. This is where you talk to somebody about somebody else with a view to changing their opinion, generally for the worse, detrimentally. Divisive speech is a negative form of speech. There are positives to all of these things, but we're just looking at what we should not do in terms of speech. So, I mean, for instance, one of the 4 actual disrobable offences for a monk is actually not lying. There is one to do with lying about one's attainments, which is why we cannot talk about our attainments, just in case we accidentally exaggerate or get it wrong and lie, or even deliberately lie, because in those circumstances we are disrobed and we can never be a monk again. Or if we kill another human being, or if we steal something over a certain value, or if we cause a schism. Now, a schism in the Sangha is the direct result of divisive speech. So if we start talking about various different monks and different groups and cause a breakup in the Sangha, cause it to be damaged in any way, this is a very serious offence for a monk. So that's how serious in our precepts gossip can be. But on a lighter note, just general talking about people behind their backs, or talking about people even in front of them with other people, can be considered divisive speech. And this is the 3rd of those categories in terms of speech. But what seems trivial is SAMPHAPPAPALAPA. Even though it has a beautiful Pali name, SAMPHAPPAPALAPA, it sounds like what it is, doesn't it? SAMPHAPPAPALAPA, SAMPHAPPAPALAPA, SAMPHAPPAPALAPA. I have a little mantra in my head when there's any of this going on. And it does go on in monastic circles. We've had a monk here that he's prone to talking. I think maybe he has a little condition. I wouldn't know because I can't, it's not something you can ask, even if you speak the language, that would come up in conversation. But with the right intention not to gossip and not to cause any divisive speech and not to harm anyone with harsh speech, I wouldn't like to say, what's with this monk and all his SAMPHAPPAPALAPA? Because it doesn't matter. He has his reasons, and he's a lovely man, a lovely monk. But sometimes, when it's all peaceful and quiet, and you hear SAMPHAPPAPALAPA, 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 and you think SAMPHAPPAPALAPA. It's a very good lesson. Ajahn SAMPHAPPAPALAPA. It's a training. It helps and reminds us of why we have noble speech. And back to noble speech, that's what it is. It's not having any SAMPHAPPAPALAPA. It's not the other three. It's all about SAMPHAPPAPALAPA. It means we don't talk about the weather. We don't talk about the football results, the cricket results. We don't talk about trivial matters of news. Now, of course, if you're a layperson and you work for, I once worked for a cricket club, an international cricket club. Now, I was practicing the 8 precepts, I was practicing noble silence, and I still had to talk about cricket results because it was part of my work. I wasn't interested, I didn't really even understand the game. But I had to know whether my team was doing well or not doing well. Otherwise, it wouldn't look, it's not how it looked. I wouldn't be doing my job necessarily effectively. I needed to know who was playing. So you can't just black and white say no cricket, no football. Football might be the love of your life and all of your friends, and it may be so it's your hobby, it's your common area of interest. So I'm just picking them out as examples, not isolating them as things you don't talk about at all. Sometimes it's very appropriate to talk about football or cricket or even the weather if it's going to affect what you're doing. What I mean is when you're standing at the washing your bowl, as monks do, or you're standing in the bus queue, or sitting on the back of the bus next to some stranger or someone you know vaguely, it isn't necessary to occupy silence with sound. Just because nobody's saying anything, you don't have to start talking about nonsense. You don't have to start idle chat. It's unnecessary. It may feel uncomfortable for a moment or two. But breathe in and think, is there something useful I could ask this person that will show that I'm interested in them and that I care? So rather than saying, oh, isn't the weather horrible? Did you see last night's game last night? Blah, 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 blah. You could just simply smile and say, how are you today? If you are associated, if it's a complete stranger, don't do that. If it's a complete stranger, there's probably no necessity to speak at all. Just smile. The way I said it, that sounds creepy too if you're on the bus. But I think you understand what I'm saying. We feel, even with our close associates, our loved ones, our friends, our work colleagues, we fill our day with idle chatter, we fill our day with useless speech, and with, talk of nonsense. It's just something it's natural for us to do. Why? It's only anxiety. It's nerves. It's actually back to these three root causes of the 3 defilements, greed, hatred, and delusion. It comes under hatred. It's aversion. It's aversion to uncertainty. Silence provokes in us, when we're in the company of others, uncertainty about, oh, what's going to happen now if I just sit here and don't fill this space with some kind of useless talk or idle chat. And you start speaking nonsense. It just starts coming out. And once it starts, it's like a tap that will not turn off. You know the feeling? There are times when it's appropriate, times when it's not. So with mindfulness, we learn to understand this. Now, it's so much easier in a community, in a monastery, in this environment where there is this rule of noble silence, because it is simply just not done. So even here, I'm very close to my monastic family here now. We're like a family. We are a family. There's not so much bowing and even talking to Ajahn unless I will have my hands in Anjali talking to Ajahn, because I'm new, I'm a Westerner, I do everything very formally. But they're so often saying, no, it's okay. Sabai, relax. No. I'll let them go on the steps, or I step aside. No, they're just we're so close, we're so caring for each other. If I see something needs doing, I just get on and do it. I don't ask for another monk, and they will the same. For example, I was away for an afternoon, someone came and one of the senior monks, Ajahn here, the most senior monk, he came and swept around my kuti, tidied. It was tidy, you leave it clean and tidy in the morning, but by the afternoon, leaves had come down. He thoroughly did what I would have done if I'd been here. And I didn't have to say thank you. I didn't have to say, hey, who did that? Let me go and say thank you, or go and do something in exchange. If I see something that needs doing for someone else, I don't look, I just do it. There's no need for us to have any conversations about anything. We know what needs doing. We know when it needs to be done. We know how it needs to be done. We know what's right and what's wrong. We don't have to say please, we don't have to say thank you. And everything can still be done with the utmost respect and reverence to our seniors, and also respect, reverence and politeness to our juniors, because they are supporting us as we are supporting them. This is community life, this is monastic life. So when it comes to SAMPHAPPAPALAPA, it is easy. We know we don't speak unless it's necessary. But I do appreciate in worldly life, it is much more something that is difficult to control. So we must not try to control it, but we must exercise mindfulness and try and observe it. And in time, and it's a very gradual training, in time you will find that you will start to speak less about trivial matters. In fact, you will start to speak less and less spoken to. And when asked, your answers will become more concise, precise, accurate, and to the point. Your associates, your close family, and people you consistently see over time will come to know this, will learn this, will understand this about you. They will also start to feel quite relaxed in your company. This edge, this uncertainty, this awkwardness, these pregnant pauses, as they're called, these awkward silences, will become less so when people know that you aren't being quiet, you're not being pensive or thinking, you're just taking the opportunity to sit with this person, be with this person, enjoy their company, without interfering with that by throwing in a whole load of ingredients that doesn't need to be there. Surely their company for you and your company for them is enough. Why clutter the room? Buddhism is a simple way of life, and simplicity comes into every aspect. it comes into sila, into morality. The 5 precepts are very simple. No killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, or taking of intoxicants. Samadhi, meditation. It's not trying hard, it's sitting. Watching the breath or a meditation object, allowing the mind to settle so that it can become calm, allowing the body to settle so that it can relax. Just that. And developing wisdom, not of an intellectual nature unless you want to, simply developing the wisdom, the knowledge, panya, that all things are impermanent, anicca. All things are unsatisfactory, dukkha. And that all things are out of our control, or not self, anatta. We are just these personalities as a result of causes and conditions that surround us, and what we say, how we speak and interact with others, likewise, is coming from that base of ego, that base of personality, that base of personality view or identity that we have created as a result of causes and conditions around us. We may feel, oh, well, I'm the most senior person here, I ought to speak, I should say something now. Just wait a moment. And if nobody says anything, then maybe you should speak. Only if necessary. Or maybe say, would you like to start talking about something today to the most junior member of your company? Or how do you feel about this? Put the subject matter in the hands of the other person that is with you. Don't expect them to necessarily want to listen to you, but be totally open and not willing, totally wanting to listen to them. They may want to give you a whole barrage of SAMPHAPPAPALAPA, in which case the kindness in you, the metta, the loving kindness, the karuna, the compassion, the mudita, the empathetic, sympathetic joy, is there to really listen to their SAMPHAPPAPALAPA. Because this is them getting stuff off their chest. It may be that they want you just to listen, so you're being kind, with loving kindness. It may be they have a problem, so you're offering compassion, karuna. Or it may be they've got something great that's happened they want to share with you. So you have mudita, which is sympathetic joy for them. And how do you treat this? How do you react? You don't. You simply sit equanimously, with upekkha. So the 4 Brahma Viharas come into practicing of non-SAMPHAPPAPALAPA. I don't think there is a Pali word like a-SAMPHAPPAPALAPA, as normally is the negative of the positive. But listening to other people's SAMPHAPPAPALAPA is teaching you, like I said, Ajahn SAMPHAPPAPALAPA is teaching you how much people do need to say. But it doesn't mean you have to do that. And as relationships develop over time, then people actually start to appreciate your lack of SAMPHAPPAPALAPA, and they become similar in their attitude to speech. If you don't have a relationship and it's a passing association, then it doesn't really matter anyway, does it? But what you have done is you've listened. Don't offload a whole load of weather, football, cricket just because you're not going to see them again. Because you've gained nothing, you've learned nothing. You've created sound, they've heard. They may not have listened, they've created sound, you've heard, you may not have listened. No, make each passing moment of interaction with fellow beings, even other species. A moment of interaction, just that, actual interaction, action with each other, social intercourse, a dialogue of listening, hearing, understanding. Even if you are listening, hearing and understanding it as SAMPHAPPAPALAPA, that's okay. As long as your response is kind, considerate, caring, and of a loving nature, so that when they leave your company, they feel good. They feel a little happier than when they arrive. This is your gift to them. This is also dana. So many of the 10 paramid, so many of the points of the Noble Eightfold Path, so much of our practice comes into right speech. And a very important part indeed of right speech is SAMPHAPPAPALAPA, or refraining from idle chat, refraining from useless speech, or refraining from talking nonsense. So, to avoid risking me now going on and SAMPHAPPALAPAing at you, I think it's time to leave this talk for this evening. And I hope it's useful. If there's anything you want to ask me about that, please pop something in the comments and I'll see if I can help you, or send me an email. And I will thank you for watching.